With a media empire valued at just under $33 billion, and ownership of a conglomerate that is second only to the Walt Disney Company in size, you would think Rupert Murdoch would be content with his business affairs. But these past few weeks have seen the chairman and CEO of News Corporation embroiled in a scandal that has tainted his company, his family, the police force, and maybe even the office of the Prime Minister itself, while simultaneously completely shifting the balance of power between the government and the press. And to think, it all started with Prince William's knee. In 2005, the News of the World reported on a tendon injury to the knee of Prince William and a doctor's appointment. The Metropolitan Police informed William of a potential phone hack, and after investigation, arrested and convicted royal editor of the News of the World, Clive Goodman, and private investigator Glenn Mulcaire, who later admitted hacking many public figures, including Sienna Miller and Jude Law, the relatives of dead soldiers, the phones of the July 7th bombing victims, and most controversially, the voicemail account of Millie Dowler, a schoolgirl missing at the time of the hacking, later found murdered by Levi Belfield. Internal investigations at the time by News International concluded that no wrongdoing had taken place. But at this time, James Murdoch, the CEO of News International and son of Rupert Murdoch, was advised by Colin Myler, the News of the World editor, and News International lawyer Tom Crone to pay six-figure settlements to hacking victims, Professional Football Association President Gordon Taylor, and publicist Max Clifford. Payoffs were also given to the two convicted men, £600,000 to Goodman, and Glenn Mulcaire had all his legal fees paid by the company. The editor of the News and the World at the time of the hacking, Andy Coulson, resigned from his new post as communications director to Prime Minister David Cameron over mounting accusations of hacking and payoffs to police for stories. Despite these suspicious actions, both an external lawyer's review and the Metropolitan Police itself found no reason to reopen investigations. The matter was thought closed until earlier this year with the Millie Dowler revelations. Widespread public revulsion spurred politicians into action, freed from any backlash from Murdoch-controlled newspapers, which arguably have the largest circulation. They called for inquiries into News International's actions and the links between police and press. For example, the police commissioner hires News of the World deputy editor Neil Wallace as press liaison, and the assistant commissioner finds a job for Wallace's daughter. Add to that former assistant commissioner Andy Heyman and director of prosecutions Ken MacDonald, both of whom investigated News International and cleared them of wrongdoing, then afterwards found employment with that same company, and all of this gives cause of concern. With junior officers accepting payment for leads on stories, it creates a rather unpleasant picture of Britain's law enforcement and their press endeavours. After sacrificing the News of the World and his bid to regain total ownership of B-Sky B, as well as Chief Executive Rebecca Brooks to try to save News Corporation's values, Rupert Murdoch eventually had to face his accusers as he and his son James went before the House of Commons. Despite a polished performance and interference from a man armed with shaving foam, the Murdochs still admitted to paying convicted criminals legal fees, compensating victims of hacking at a time of professed innocence, and forcing confidentiality agreements on those it paid. The legal implications are clear, with possible US prosecution under the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act for paying off police, a British investigation under the Regulation of Investigatory Powers Act, not to mention lawsuits from hacking victims for illegal message interception, and a lawsuit by News Corporation shareholders themselves, who allege the board could not have been unaware of the hacking at the News of the World, though this lawsuit is probably more down to the fall in News Corporation shares from the scandal and annoyance at perceived nepotism in its dealings. Now, News Corporation is not the only user of investigative data. The Information Commission's report, What Price Privacy Now, cites 4 other newspapers, all owned by other proprietors, who used more information from private investigators. Nor is it the largest broadcaster. That title goes to the BBC. The reason News International is the focus is that they were the most aggressive news organisation, taking on all comers so viciously that when it was found that they were at fault, they fell twice as hard. It has led to a decimation of the leadership, a fall in share price, and a tainting of the News Corp brand. Rupert Murdoch has looked weak and ineffectual, whilst his son James's position as the heir apparent has looked increasingly under threat. Politicians have called for tougher regulation of the press in the UK. But is this really the answer? After all, it is the liberty of the press in the UK that allowed this scandal to be reported, and the libel laws of the UK are so draconian that if details were untrue, a writ would have already been issued. The perceived hold of the Murdochs over the political class of the UK has evaporated, with the possibility of the sale of his newspaper chain here being discussed in business circles. What we need now is a new relationship with the press, one where the crushing super injunction cannot hamper investigations that would be in the public interest, in exchange for new powers to protect the right of the individual to privacy from unnecessary intrusion. News Corporation has brought the UK's press corps into disrepute. Let us not legislate good honest journalism out of existence in order to prevent the rise of a new Murdoch.